Here's Neymar now, Cavani is there. Balotelli on the turn. Quality. Kalufa Kamano. Oh, what a strike! An absolute beauty from Florian Thauvin. Kylian Mbappe wraps it up.
Bonjour, hello, bienvenue. Welcome to the Beau Jeu podcast, episode 3 of our podcast dedicated to France's top flight. My name is Matt Spiro, and joining me in the pod today, I've got Robbie Thompson.
Hello, everyone.
Robbie, who is our Australian Paris Saint-Germain specialist, one of the commentators of Ligue in English, and another Ligue 1 commentator in English. Joining me today is Andy Scott. Andy, hello.
Hello, Matt.
The big debut.
Yes.
Big debut for
Thank
Andy.
you.
Just to let you know, Andy is probably the best thing to happen to Ligue 1 out of Scotland since Mo Johnston played for Nantes back in the 80s. Would you go with that,
Derek
Andy?
McInnes.
Derek McInnes?
Toulouse.
I thought you were going to go with John Collins, but Derek McInnes is a good shout.
Yes.
Andy was at the Parc des Princes last night. That is surely the place to start because we had the Classique. We had the second Classique of the season. Paris Saint-Germain were victorious. It was a big night for PSG against Marseille because it was their first game at the Parc since they lost to Manchester United in the Champions League. There was all sorts of talk about a supporter strike, and we saw the ultras behind the goal who basically stayed out of their seats for the first 15 minutes, didn't cheer the PSG players because they're so fed up with the way that PSG went out against United and the fact that this is becoming a bit of a repetitive story, PSG bowing out of the Champions League prematurely. Marseille arrived in good form, 16 points from a possible 18. Mario Balotelli, a lot of talk about whether he'd play or not. He didn't travel with the team because of a reported stomach problem, but he arrived on the Sunday. And Andy, what we saw was it was a slightly unusual game, wasn't it? Partly because the atmosphere at the beginning was all a bit, much quieter than it usually is for this affair.
Yeah, and obviously it was, from that point of view, it was good that things picked up after 15 minutes, pretty spectacularly as well. I would say that it's probably the most striking atmosphere and most striking fixture between PSG and Marseille that I've seen at the Parc des Princes since the last time Marseille beat them, which was in 2010, when things were quite nasty among the PSG support. And if you remember that game, I think Marseille won 3-0 on the way to winning the title. And it was after that game that PSG effectively, for want of a better word, declared war on their ultras and tried to sort of clean up the Parc des Princes and change the atmosphere. But obviously, they've since brought the ultras back, who've added to the atmosphere in the stadium again. And nevertheless, it has generated a bit of tension in the last 10 days because of their exit from the Champions League. But with that tied into the fact that the game itself was quite a fiery spectacle at times, not necessarily a brilliant game, but there were lots of flashpoints. Lots of moments of real quality.
And just, Andy, for the listeners who are waiting with bated breath, it finished 3-1 to Paris Saint-Germain. We haven't
forget
mentioned the
whole reason why we're here, which is to win football matches, boys.
Yeah.
Paris Saint-Germain, who were 17 points clear at the top of the standings, they're now 20 points clear. It was a big game for Marseille as well because they're trying to make up for all the lost points earlier in the season. That they were in good form and they're trying to finish in the top 3. But Robbie, PSG too good again for Marseille.
Too good on the night, but for me, the most important thing to take from the match was just the drama of it all. Like we were saying, Balotelli, will he play, will he not play? Is it just all a bit of shenanigans? Kylian Mbappe apparently getting injured during the warm-up and leaving, not finishing the warm-up with his teammates. Is that a little bit of payback to Marseille, thinking Marseille are trying to get one over as well? Maybe Kylian's just injured himself, he's not going to play. And then he walks out in the starting 11. The fans are on strike. It's Paris Saint-Germain doubting all of France, eyes on them, thinking they're not going to win this. They're not going to win. This is the moment.
It's good though, isn't it?
It's brilliant. That's what we want. Marseille, 5 wins and a draw in their last 6. This Marseille, who the biggest city in the south, playing the rich boys from the north. I mean, it was everything.
The biggest football club in France, no, Robbie, Marseille.
Well, historically, I think Saint-Etienne might have a word to say about that. Nantes, Reims, perhaps even as well. No, look, it had all the ingredients for a great story. It had a sending off. It had a fantastic individual performance. It had a fight. It had, everything you want from Le Classique. It was like the good old days, even a bit of fan problems in the stands, not against each other or against opposition fans, but it was dramatic. It was a dramatic
tension.
evening.
There was tension in the
air.
There
was
tension
everywhere. Exactly. And I remember the match when Fabrice Fiorez and Frédéric Dahoud came back to the Parc des Princes, and that tension in the air and this feeling
they were
that this
PSG
volatile
who signed for Marseille,
and really hurt Paris as well, because they were like fan favourites at the time and had been. Fiorez had scored last minute winners against Marseille. Frédéric Dahoud was the captain of the side, and they both went and signed for Marseille at the same time. And the fans they were in shock, and the tension that night was just unbelievable in the park. And last night, well, it wasn't the same, but it was a great dramatic evening. And don't forget, this is the biggest match on the Ligue 1 calendar. You can have regional things. This is the one that the whole country watches. This is the one that tops the TV ratings every...
I think it's important, Robbie, to hammer that home, because people outside of France, I find, don't quite realise how big Paris Saint-Germain and Marseille are. People think that PSG are a bit of a nouveau riche club. They've certainly entered a new era in the last 8 years. But even, in the 90s, in the noughties, in the noughties when Lyon were winning the league every year, Jean-Michel Aulas got fed up because everybody talked about PSG, who were sort of 12th or 13th in the league, and the papers were full of PSG. PSG and Marseille are the two clubs that attract the most media interest, and they have the most supporters, I would say nationwide. And just, you mentioned an exceptional standout performance. That was Angel Di Maria, but we will talk about Di Maria, who was sensational. But I just want to talk, Andy, about another player, because what last night had a pantomime villain. And that, of course, was Mario. Was he going to come? Was he not going to come? He started. He looked absolutely fine. I don't know how serious his stomach problems were. And he just seemed to be loving the fact that the Parc des Princes was singing as one, insulting him. And, it was all good-hearted stuff. And I think Mario likes that. He got substituted when
he's the player the fans love to hate, but you get the feeling he loves to be hated as well. It's his bread and butter.
And when he got taken off, he walked off very slowly, banging his Marseille badge and pointing at the badge with the supporters. We heard after the game,
which is a little bit riculous as well, because they were losing and they lost the match, and he's saying, "Well, this is Marseille here."
But Robbie, it's nice. It's nice to see. And after the game, reports emerged that under his shirt he was wearing a Marcus Rashford shirt, or some kind of tribute to Marcus Rashford, the United player who scored the decisive penalty. The idea being that if he scored at the Parc des Princes, he would have taken that shirt off. We were hoping he was going to go with Dave Crosson's suggestion for a celebration last week. If you missed that, go back to episode 2. But Andy, Mario, he's doing an awful lot of good to Marseille, and I think it's fair to say to Ligue 1 in general.
Yeah, completely. Just as an aside, on Saturday I had a day off football completely. Was meant to be in London actually, but transport problems put paid to that. But I had a day off football, and just on Saturday night I checked my phone for any updates, and I saw that Balotelli had not travelled with the squad. My heart kind of sank. I just thought, well, this is such a shame. If he doesn't play in this game, it's just going to it's not going to be the same spectacle. And then I think we started to realise over the course of the day on Sunday that he probably was going to play. And it was a relief when we saw him on the team sheet for Marseille. He didn't have a great game by any means, but
he could have changed with that shot in the first 5 minutes, where he had a good effort on goal.
I would say completely, and I would say that from all the times that I've seen games at the Parc des Princes this season, whether just being in the stadium or whether commentating on them, whatever, I think that along with Romelu Lukaku, he is the most impressive centre-forward I've seen play against PSG at the Parc des Princes this season. Now, PSG are, usually unplayable at home. Teams tend not to be able to compete with them. Balotelli clearly, even not playing at his best, is a player who is good enough to cause real problems for the likes of Marquinhos.
You can see that when you're in the stadium. He's got that presence.
Exactly. But is it just mental? Is it just his mental strength?
This is what I was going to say, because we talked about PSG's mental fragility. And I tell you what, Thiago Silva, Marquinhos, Kimpembe, like you say, Andy, 99% of the time they are just monsters and nobody can live with them in Ligue 1. But last night there were some jittery moments. When Balotelli was loitering, I saw Marquinhos put a foot wrong more than once, and you just wonder, we're going back to the shortcomings in the Champions League, because in the Champions League you play against guys of this stature. But Robbie, we're going to move on to Angel, because Angel Di Maria last night was absolutely sensational. And I tell you what, he has been for if not the whole season, certainly the last few months. I commentated the PSG game at Dijon, and his free kick was just sensational, just perfectly arced over the wall, in off the post. He did it again from even further out last night, a free kick. He just kissed the post on its way in. It's just unbelievable accuracy. And what he is doing with the football at the moment, Robbie, is just sensational.
I am an unashamed disciple from the Church of Di Maria. I love him. I think he's just a player that can make the difference. Even when people criticize him at the start of every season, saying, look, his attitude isn't right, he doesn't try, just get him to leave Paris. We need players that will fight. The player can do things that you rarely see on a football pitch. His control from Colin Dagba's pass, no look, outside of the left boot or with his heel, cushion control, while looking over his right shoulder. If you get the chance to see Kylian Mbappe's goal, the opening goal last night, look at the control from Di Maria, because it's a thing of pure beauty, and players can't do that. Normal players, normal human beings cannot do what Di Maria can do with a football, and he shows it again and again. In his defense, when people criticize him at the start of every season, which they invariably do, the guy has barely had a holiday over a summer for 6 seasons. Every time he's at the World Cup, Argentina got knocked out a bit earlier this time, but they've made World Cup finals, they've made Copa America finals. They lose them all every time. It's devastating for a player. He even missed the World Cup final through injury, having been the hero for Argentina.
I think I made a mistake throwing that question to the founder of the Angel Di Maria fan club. Andy, before the pod said, well, it's great that he's coming into form at the right moment.
I haven't spoken about his goals yet.
Which is a
slightly... Just look at the control.
Which is a slightly ironic comment. Well, I talked about his free kick, but his first goal was...
It's stunning.
Can I just say, I was being, a bit cruel there, saying that he's coming into form just at the right time when, of course, they've only just been knocked out of the Champions League. But let's not forget that, PSG were very disappointing in the second leg against Manchester United, and so was he. But in the first leg, he was very good. He played very well, and
sensational.
You touched on it when he missed the World Cup final a few years ago. He's quite a physically fragile-looking guy, but he's got something about him. I mean, that challenge at Old Trafford when he went crashing into the, off the pitch and into the fence beside the pitch, and yet he picked himself up and got on with it. And last night he was... people will say, oh yeah, but, PSG going to run away with the title again. Marseille are not that good. But, Di Maria, that was genuinely world class. The way that he led the counter-attack for the first goal and the way that he scored the second goal and the third goal was just incredible.
Just to finish on PSG, Robbie, because we can't talk about Angel for 45 minutes. But I'm going to throw this one to you. It was 3-1 to PSG. Steve Mandanda had been sent off. We were in added time, and it's a penalty to Paris Saint-Germain. And Mr. Mbappe, instead of saying, Angel, have a hat-trick, here you go, you can take this penalty, Kylian stepped up and he got it saved. Was there a bit of tension maybe in the dressing room after that?
Absolutely not. These things, Angel Di Maria is also a perfect professional. There's no doubt whatsoever. He's a kid on the training ground, but he's a professional in matches. Look, Kylian Mbappe, he's the goal scorer. It will be decided before the match who takes the penalties, like it was when there was all this penalty gate between Neymar and Edinson Cavani. There is a designated penalty taker. It's Kylian Mbappe. He scored his last one. He now has a 50% penalty record in Ligue 1 throughout his career. It wasn't a great penalty, but he is the penalty taker for that match. Perhaps it will change for the next time. There's no romance in football at this level, guys. There's not. Wouldn't it be great if he can score a hat-trick, his first here at the Parc des Princes in a big match? Kylian Mbappe is trying to probably break all the records for goal scoring. He's got 26 now in Ligue 1. He's having an incredible season. He's won the World Cup. Why wouldn't he take the penalty?
Indeed. Listeners, if you have anything to say about that, or if you want to ask us anything, any questions about Ligue 1, you can email us at Ligue1podcast@gmail.com. That is LIGUE1, the number, podcast@gmail.com. Or you could even tweet us with the hashtag Ligue1podcast. You can tweet the account at Ligue1_ENG. We're going to move on now. We're going to talk about Monaco, French champions 2 seasons ago, relegation candidates this season. They started the campaign, of course, under Leonardo Jardim. He was sacked. Thierry Henry came in. He was sacked. Jardim has come back, and he has steadied the ship. Robbie, you say they're not relegation contenders anymore. They could go down still, but it is looking highly unlikely. They're still unbeaten in the league under Leonardo Jardim. And Andy, they were victorious on Friday night against the second-placed team. They won 1-0 away to Lyon. A really good goal at the end, scored by Vinicius, one of these very talented young players finding their feet at Monaco. Andy, what do you make of Monaco, and does Jardim deserve the credit for coming in and turning things round again?
I mean, completely. That's kind of obvious, really, when you look at the way the results have just completely turned around since he came back in. They're not going to go down. I guess that was the ultimately the reason why they brought him back when they did.
They had to do whatever they could to avoid relegation.
Exactly, and you know, now they look like they will finish somewhere comfortably mid-table, and then they can build again for next season. And of course, this Carlos Vinicius is a player who by all accounts, Leonardo Jardim, when he did have nothing to do for a few months, when he was on that paid holiday, was taking in some games in Portugal, and sort of this player caught his eye. And now they brought him in, and there he is doing a turn for a team who have been needing a centre-forward who can provide the goals when Falcao is not scoring, or in the case of Friday, is not playing. And to go away to Lille and win is a remarkable result. I mean, Lille have been incredible at home for a year now. So to go there and win a game, especially when Monaco don't necessarily need to be winning games now. You know, in a way, the pressure is kind of off them.
Well, just they're still 16th. They've got 30 points, and they're 8 points above Guingamp, who are 18th. So
yeah. I'm not. I mean, of course, yeah, they're not safe yet. But at the same time, they could have looked at the fixtures to come and said, "Well, this is one of our hardest games we've got coming up, and if we don't win this game, it doesn't matter too much." But they've gone there, they've snatched 3 points, kind of the way that Monaco used to do things in Jardim's first season. You know, they weren't a particularly thrilling team to watch, but they ground out results, and they've done it again. And here they are.
Andy, you say, or Robbie, it might have been you, said, "Well, Monaco, they've done what they had to do to stay up," but Monaco, they sacked Leonardo Jardim earlier this season. They went and got a club legend and said, "Right, Thierry Henry, this is where you're going to build your managerial career." And
Vadim Vassiliev has been fired since then as well for his role in perhaps reacting too quickly.
Vadim Vassiliev, exactly.
The vice president, sporting director. Vice president.
But Robbie, I look at this Monaco team at the moment. This is not the team Thierry Henry had. Thierry Henry had a team of kids. They had, I think, up to 17 players injured at one point, including leading players, Ronnie Lopez, Radamel Falcao. He very rarely had senior players. We had Kamil Glik and Jemison, who were often playing, and they were dreadful for some reason at the back. They are established players. And the kids looked lost. We look at this. They brought in Cesc Fabregas, one of the best midfielders in European football. Okay, perhaps not quite at the peak of his powers, but what a player to bring in. They've got Gelson Martins, who's come in on loan from Atletico Madrid and looks absolutely
a handy player, doesn't he?
Absolutely tremendous.
And maybe, by the way, Atletico Madrid could have done with him the other day. The way that Gelson Martins is playing is the kind of player they're missing.
Absolutely. But, they've brought in 7 or 8 very good footballers. They've got the likes of Ronnie Lopez back from injury. I mean, I honestly think I could come in, take over this team, which is a totally different team to the one that Henry had, and get better results.
Well, that's very humble of you, Matt. I'd like to see perhaps start with a regional amateur side first before taking over Monaco. Look, yes, can I rewind a little bit further to the start of the season then before getting to Thierry? All these people criticising the Monaco transfer system and the way they operate and saying, look, they've bought all these players, it's so risky, what a disaster it's been, this was bound to happen. This is the system that won them the league. It was the most remarkable thing that earned them massive amounts of money. You can't have your cake and eat it too if you're not prepared to take these risks and have the positives of it and then the risk of the negatives. Look, they bought some sensational young players, perhaps too many at one time. Perhaps they did overdo it. Perhaps things just didn't gel, the change of coaches and everything. But they have some quality young players that they bought last summer who will be. Sofiane Diop looks a very, very promising player and will probably go for millions and millions.
He's come through the academy?
No, I think they bought him from Rennes.
They bought him from Rennes, that's right.
And one of these players that they spend a lot of money on, they've bought the youngster from Lyon as well, who injured his knee, whose name eludes me at the moment. Goebbels, yes.
Do you think, Andy, sorry, I've just cut you off in your prime, but
I haven't got to Thierry Henry yet, Matt.
do you think, Andy, looking back at what Monaco did 2 years ago. Sensational. Champions League semi-finalists, league champions.
Fantastic.
Do they look back and think we made mistakes selling I think it was 6 first team?
But they won the league the year after, having sold half their team as well. The like James Rodriguez, all these players
it took them 2 years, really, didn't it, to go from the 2015 team,
the promoted team under Ranieri.
Well, the promoted team, and then 2015, a team that got to the Champions League quarterfinals. That was a really exciting team, and then they got to the stage where they had that really thrilling team that went all the way and won the league. And I suppose, naturally, we kind of are where we are now. They knew that they would take a step back again. They thought that this season would be obviously far better than it's turned out to be. They have made mistakes. Bringing Jardim back clearly has just taken him back in the right direction again. Absolutely. I mean, ultimately, we always know with hindsight whether something has been a good decision or not. Thierry Henry, they needed to act, and clearly from Henry's point of view, ultimately you can say it was the wrong thing for him to do to go to Monaco when he did, and from Jardim's point of view to bring him back when they did has proven to be the right decision, because they'll stay up. And I suppose we'll only see beyond this summer and into next season whether it really is the right decision in the long term, if he can build another team that can compete towards the top of the table.
Well, that's what he does. And that's certainly what he will do again next season. They will sell their best elements. They will lose the players that are on loan. They will not re-sign the older players who are reaching the end of. They've had problems with Subasic this year as well, on and off the pitch. But
then, as you say, it's not just Jardim. It's the changes above that. Vadim Vasiliev moving on, and new people coming in at that level of the club. So it's whether they can all work together and create a team, a first team that can go and compete. When you look at the teams competing at the top this season, you say that we're looking a bit too far ahead here. But Lille, you have no idea what's going to happen there next season. Marseille and Lyon was always unpredictable.
38 points last season.
Yeah,
escaped relegation on the final day. Disastrous campaign.
Exactly.
Look at them now.
So it shows what can be done, and it also suggests that there will be room for Monaco next season to kick on and do something again.
And I think, just quickly, Matt, 1 point on Thierry Henry, because I know he's a man who dear to your heart. I don't think people should be judging him, like you say, on what we saw from Thierry Henry here. That people want to judge. Everyone's desperate to judge. There's so much money involved. Their passions run so high in football. That's why everyone loves it. That's why one of the reasons why we love it, apart from the game as well. But people want to judge Thierry Henry and say, look, it's a disaster. We cut down the tall poppy. As you say, he arrived in a club. He was almost probably trying to do the club a service as well, do them a favour. Coming back, they were a club in desperate need. He was the prodigal son returning. All those injured players didn't have the squad come in. It's almost never going to work. And then taking a high-profile side like that have had a disastrous Champions League campaign as well, and everyone going, Thierry, miracle, please. No, it doesn't work that way. And I'm sure people are not people in the know. He will get another job. He will not be judged on those 3 months.
People, whoever people are,
Les anciens.
They are judging him, and they will judge him on that. And that's why I want to make the point that the team that Jardim has got at the moment is a different team to the one that Henry had. And I just want to say, it fills me with pride when I hear Andy Scott raving enthusiastically about Ligue and about Monaco. When this chap came over to France, he was living in Spain before. He was working, I think, for Real Madrid TV. Yeah. And I remember a conversation I had with Andy saying, this French football lark, I mean, is it worth getting involved? He was a bit of a football snob. It was all Real Madrid and Barcelona, and now he's got the bug, and I love that.
Completely, yeah. The first Ligue 1 game I commentated, Bordeaux against Grenoble in 2009. Things have changed a lot since then, to be fair.
Bordeaux against Grenoble. There's certainly no turning back once you've done a Bordeaux Grenoble game. We're going to move on to another big team. That is Lyon. Lyon had a good weekend, actually, because they've been slipping of late, but they're in third position, and they managed to defeat Montpellier by 3-2. So they've closed the gap on Lille to 4 points. So they need to try and finish above Lille to get automatic Champions League qualification. Perhaps more significantly, they're now 6 ahead of Marseille. You never quite know what to expect with Lyon. They gave it a good go, I think it's fair to say, against Barcelona, but got punished at the end. Lionel Messi in sensational form, and because at 2-1, Lyon were threatening to get that second goal and perhaps knock Barcelona out. It finished 5-1.
I think it was a bridge too far.
It was a bridge too far, and against Montpellier, a team I think it's fair to say that were more in terms of their level, in terms of a team that they can beat. But like I say, Robbie, we never quite know what to expect with this Lyon side, and the question always comes back to Bruno Genesio. Is he getting the best out of them? What's your view on Lyon's season so far?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I must be caught up in the atmosphere of the podcast and judging and giving opinions, something I normally hate doing, but I think Lyon will overhaul Lille for second place. I think Lille, they've reached the end. Their wave is just running out of a bit of steam. I think they're going to peter out.
Robbie.
They don't have steam. I was trying to think, what does a wave do when it starts to peter out? But, well, anyway, they've ridden their wave, and now it's starting to peter out. I think Lyon are just the slow and steady. They know what happens at the business end of the season. I think, yeah, Andy, I've gone out on a limb here. You heard it here first.
If there's one thing that you can't call Lyon, it's steady. You know, I think they're pretty unpredictable and will stay that way. But they do have, I agree, they have the quality to catch Lille.
And they're a big club, no matter what you say. And I think I just see them coming back and doing the job here. Bruno Genesio, look, what can you say about him? This is a repetitive story that's been happening for not just this season, but past seasons as well. Challenged by members of his own supporters who don't like him. If there is a question mark over him, it is this question of consistency, because that's what you want from a team. And the fact that they cannot always do it against the smaller clubs, that they don't seem to be fully focused, that they can beat Manchester City in Manchester and come unstuck in games at home against more modest opposition. That, for me, is a problem that the coach needs to address.
Well, Robbie, Bruno Genesio is out of contract this summer. Jean-Michel Aulas, the club president, has basically kept him guessing, kept the supporters guessing. He hasn't stated yet as to whether Bruno Genesio will be kept on. We had the pleasure of speaking to Rafael da Silva, the Brazilian right-back who was signed from Manchester United. And Rafael is certainly very much of the opinion that Bruno Genesio is the right man.
We cannot blame the coach for everything, you know. This is important as well. I think at this moment, he's the easiest guy to blame, you know. No, it's his fault. Well, like you said, we play some fantastic match against fantastic teams. We play against for me, is the best coach in the world. It's Guardiola, and I must say, tactically, we just killed them away and at home. So it's of course it's the players, but it's the coach as well. So we have to see that he's a very good coach, tactically, and you know, he's just young as well. You can say that he's improving every time.
Well, it's interesting to hear a player speaking with such conviction about his coach. Bruno Genesio is a Lyon man through and through. He's come through the ranks, if you like, as a coach. He was in charge of the youth team, in charge of the reserves, and he is getting some sensationally good results. Lyon took 4 points off Manchester City in the Champions League, and no Premier League side, by the way, this season has taken 4 points off Manchester City. They drew with Barcelona. Ultimately, they got turned over in the Nou Camp. That can happen. But, Andy, do you think Jean-Michel Aulas is playing with fire a little bit? Because we know that Bruno Genesio is working now with agents. A story has emerged very recently that Newcastle have Genesio in their sights should Rafael Benitez leave Newcastle. Is Aulas taking a risk here?
No, I don't think that he is. I think that Jean-Michel Aulas is perfectly within his rights to wait and see. I think that Bruno Genesio has, on the whole, done a very good job with Lyon. I think he could do better, and I think that's why Jean-Michel Aulas is thinking, well, let's just wait here. Having said that, you know, I'm not sure who else would be out there that they could bring in and would necessarily do better. There's certainly no guarantees in that regard. You know, Genesio has done a pretty good job, but let's not forget that Lyon, you know, you talk about Marseille and PSG being big clubs, which they are. Lyon are a big club too, you know, and they've moved into this new stadium. All the infrastructure seems to be in place. They've got great young players, and they know that they can't keep these young players indefinitely, and therefore there is obviously pressure to deliver something before they end up, you know, seeing this team break up. So, you know, the cup is there potentially to be won this season, and I would say that, you know, this season could still finish with them missing out on a Champions League place losing in the cup semi-finals, and suddenly we'd say, well, it's not been a great season.
I just said they were going to finish second, Andy.
Well, they could all. I mean,
what is interesting,
course,
Andy?
yeah.
What is interesting? Jean-Michel Aulas talking this week said, "Listen, we're still in with a shout of winning the cup, and we can finish in the top 2 or 3." And he said, "For me, winning the cup is the priority." And that, I found that interesting because usually, a president will say it's all about being in the Champions League, continuity, finances. And the supporters will say, actually, we want trophies. So, Jean-Michel Aulas is often very connected with the supporters, and it's interesting to hear him say that.
Of course. I mean, it's been 7 years since they won any silverware, which is a long time. I mean, when you think what they did in the last decade, obviously 7 years really is a long time when they won 7 league titles in a row in the last decade. So they need to win a trophy, but they also need to be in the Champions League. And, the way the Champions League is now, if you finish third, it shouldn't matter too much. And certainly, if Lyon end up finishing third, I would fancy them to reach the group stage of the Champions League, whereas if Lille finished third, I wouldn't be so sure. So I think for Lyon's point of view...
Well, it depends which Lille we see next year.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I think from Lyon's point of view, I don't think they have to finish second, but I think they have to finish in the top 3. They don't have to win the cup because PSG are in the draw as well, but I think they need to get to the final.
And just to finish on Genesio, something that is quite amusing, because we get issues with translations and what have you. And over the last year or so, poor old Bruno Genesio, who gets criticised and mocked even by some medias, and notably one radio station who started calling him Pep Genesio as a sort of ironic comment about his tactical capabilities or lack of. And it was very funny when Lyon played Barcelona in the pre-match press conference. A Catalan journalist said, we understand that your nickname in France is Pep. You must be very humbled and very, very happy about that. And Genesio gave quite an amusing answer. But I wonder if Pini Zahavi, his agent, is playing on that and selling this as part of his story. You can sign the man that we call Pep Genesio. It would be interesting to see him in England. I've no idea if he speaks English, but didn't stop Claude Puel.
One thing about Genesio is that it would be... it would be a big move for him to go manage in England. I mean, Newcastle United, David Crossan from this parish would obviously know better than us, but they are not necessarily the most stable club, are they? And it would be
probably not playing Champions League football next season.
Well, of course, yeah, but I'm not sure about when you think about Remy Gard a few years ago, a Lyon man who came through and coached the first team and did pretty well there, and ended up at Aston Villa. And things did not work out for him at all. And be wary, if I were Bruno Genesio, of taking a step like that. But, he's always been a Lyon man, as you said before. So for him to leave, to fly the nest and work somewhere else is always going to be a gamble. I'm sure I think he's clearly good enough to do it.
And as a coach, he wants challenges as well. He wants his career to go as far as it can as well.
And just, I want to bring Raphael back in here, because looking more sort of... globally, let's say, at the Lyon situation. Back in the day when Remy Gard was in charge, it was very much about bringing through the kids, and it was all about the academy, and Lyon have a fantastic academy. They then shifted the policy a little bit, where Jean-Michel Aulas decided that as well as bringing through kids, they could bring in players that had top-level experience, and they could go to top clubs, bring in a Rafael da Silva or a Memphis Depay from Manchester United, bring in Bertrand Traoré from Chelsea, bring in Mariano Diaz from Real Madrid, players who are at big clubs but not necessarily thriving and need another challenge. Now, Raphael feels that Lyon now, to take the next step, needs stability. They need to stop the chopping and changing. They need the players to stay on board, and they need to build a proper unit that can evolve together.
I play at Manchester United when you have Scholes, Gary Neville, Giggs, Fletcher, John O'Shea, West Brom, the guys who play like forever together, that's helped a lot. And I think maybe that's the thing we miss in Lyon, because here is a different club. They like to, the former players to go away and this stuff. Maybe that's the case.
So going on what Raphael has just said, and obviously his United experience is going to be very much a strong memory for him. That means what Lyon have to do, they have to keep Usamawa, they have to keep Ndombele, if possible, they have to keep Fekir, and they could have their own, class of 92. I mean, it's a difficult challenge, but that is how United built their success, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're going to have to sell somebody, because that's the way football works now at the top level. But the challenge will be keeping one or two of these players. They can't
Cynic
afford to sell them all.
Might think that Raphael is just trying to suggest that he should sign on again for a couple more seasons, perhaps.
Yeah, but
now.
that's very cynical. And I'll tell you what, Robbie, Raphael recently said in a press conference that he's desperate to stay in Lyon because he's enjoying it and his family are loving life at Lyon.
Yeah.
And I saw the reactions to that from Lyon fans, and he is such a popular figure. I know he's not a starter at the moment. Leo Dubois has taken his place, but he is a proper team man. And at United, he remains a very, very much, a much loved figure. Andy, Lyon are not going to be the next Manchester United, but could they be the next Borussia Dortmund? Because Dortmund managed to do that. They managed to sell the odd big name, and they managed to keep progressing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have, as I said before, they have all the infrastructure in place. They have one of the most productive youth academies anywhere in Europe. After the big two clubs in Spain, I think it is the most productive in terms of bringing through players who play for clubs in the big leagues in Europe. So the challenge for them is to keep on doing that. And then, as we said before, to keep some of the younger players for as long as possible, like Houssem Aouar, keep them until they're 23, 24, 25, rather than lose them when they're 20, 21. If they can do that, if they can keep, you said that Jean-Michel Aulas wants to win the cup ahead of finishing in the top three, but I just don't think it works like that anymore. They have to be in the Champions League again next season. They have to try and get to the last 16 again, 2, 3, 4 years in a row, which for them, unlike for PSG, would be fine. And then in 4 or 5 years' time, start thinking about going further than that if they want to keep growing as a club.
If they win the cup and finish third, do they still choose Champions League football over going into the Europa League as cup winners? They can, can't they? If they finish second,
Europa League.
Well, they would choose Champions League. If they finish second and win the cup, they're obviously going into the Champions League. Third place, is there a choice involved?
Robbie,
yes,
you are Jean-Michel Aulas. You have to sell one big name this summer: Ndombele, Fekir, Memphis Depay, or Aouar. Which one do you sell?
I sell Fekir. Just because question marks over that knee, and probably I would sell him. I'm not.
Hard man.
He's also a World Cup winner who
wouldn't sell Memphis Depay.
You're not doing much to build up his price there, are you? But I think you're right, because Fekir is the oldest of these players, isn't he? So when he gets, it's hard to believe that he's nearly 25, isn't he? But when he gets to that age, you think, well, okay, as I said before, you try and keep these players until they're 24, 25.
Aouar and Ndombele, they have at least younger. 1 or 2 more seasons.
What about Memphis? You're seriously saying you'd keep Memphis and you'd sell Nabil Fekir?
Well, I would keep Memphis above Nabil Fekir, yes.
I think they could sell them both.
No, you need some creativity.
What I mean is, I think
but
they could sell them both, and I think it'd be fine.
Until we found a new position for Memphis Depay in the latter half of last season as a central striker, when Mariano Diaz found himself on the bench, the two were playing the same position, and you couldn't play both of them at the same time. Look, they're similar players. Depay, perhaps physically for me, is a more powerful specimen. He's a fantastic athlete. He can beat players from a standing start. He can run past players. Technically, he's superb. He's like Fekir, but he's younger and stronger. So you keep Depay. And he is a player that if you can convince him with a new contract, with however, get inside his head, convince him that this is the place for him to be. Because that's all you have to do. Convince him that this is the place he needs to be. He's dreaming of Real Madrid, of whatever. You convince him this is the place to be, and he will win you things. Depay is a player that can win matches.
I've seen Robbie out on the football pitch. He's this sort of mercurial left footer, and I just think you've got something.
Not the same power.
But it's about the Di Marias and the Depays. I can see that you see a like mind. Well, there you go. Robbie he's not your typical Australian, because they're more kind of gritty footballers, but Andy is definitely the typical Scot. He puts his foot in at every opportunity. But Andy, I'm gonna move on and away from your skills towards your skills as a commentator, let's say, because you were commentating Bordeaux against Rennes yesterday. It was Paulo Sousa's first game in charge of Bordeaux. Bordeaux, like Monaco, have had a tumultuous season. They've sacked Gustavo Poyet at the start of the season. They brought in Ricardo. He is now gone. They're onto their third coach, Paulo Sousa. It finished 1-1 against Rennes. How did you find Bordeaux?
Well, Paulo Sousa was very positive after the game, which I suppose you'd expect him to be after his first match in charge, even though they it was a 1-1 draw. They conceded a 92nd minute equaliser scored by Nyong, and actually Rennes deserved the draw. But Paulo Sousa said that we created lots of chances, that everything that they worked on the pitch in his first week in charge, he saw out there on the pitch, the stuff that they'd done in training. I have to say that I wasn't massively impressed by Bordeaux. They played a three-man defence. They were fairly comfortable. Rennes didn't create too much, but you have to remember that Rennes were obviously tired after the Europa League defeat against Arsenal, which was on Thursday evening, so they didn't have a lot of time to prepare for this game. I just saw a Bordeaux team who didn't look especially ambitious. They tried to play their way out from the back. Sometimes it didn't quite work for them. I think Otavio, the Brazilian in midfield, is a bit ponderous, a bit slow at this level. Maybe that's a bit unfair on him. They have a front three, which on paper looks quite promising, with Depreville, Jimmy Briand, the veteran, and especially Francois Camano, who got their goal. But, they didn't create much, and they had the two wing-backs playing, trying to get forward, but again, there just wasn't a lot happening in the final third.
Was there any sign of the youngsters they brought in January? Because they're talented players. Josh Maja was signed from Sunderland. He was enjoying a prolific season at Sunderland. Yassin Adli as well. They've not made a big impact so far.
No sign of them at all in the game. Maja was an unused substitute. Obviously, as you said, it's been a tumultuous season. We talked about Thierry Henry before. Let's not forget that Bordeaux really wanted Thierry Henry to become their coach back in August, and they've since had all these changes at the club. Obviously, the American owners coming in the autumn. This was their opportunity to bring in their own man, because previously when they appointed Ricardo Gomez, it was just as the sale was going through in the process of being completed. So now they've got their own man in Paulo Sousa. He's got an impressive pedigree. He's well travelled. He's clearly a man with lots of ideas. This is only one game. You can't judge him on it, but they're a club who need to make a lot of changes, and it's going to take a lot of work for them to get to where they want to be.
They've been drifting, haven't they, a little bit? Joe DeGrossa, the American who has come in, I have to say, Robbie, I was a bit concerned, because one of the first statements I saw from him was that the catering at the stadium isn't good enough. The burgers have got to be better. Don't worry, guys, we're going to sort it out. And you can imagine, I saw that on Twitter. Most of the fans were like, "Okay, that's great news, but could you sort out the football team first?"
That's right, but that's also well, I wasn't sure that it was an official account when I saw that initial tweet. Apparently, it is. So he did in fact.
Because you've got to get people to the stadium, and at the moment,
exactly,
they're not even.
And they have
a
big brand new stadium as well that, for mine, lacks a little bit of soul at the moment. When you go there, I've been there a few times in the last couple of years. It's a stadium that needs to get the Blue Marine back, the fans, their supporter group. It's a club it's not a football town traditionally as well. Bordeaux, they have had great teams in the 80s, champions in 2009, of course, where the fans did get behind them. But when things are going down, the fans are not necessarily there, not on huge numbers, not to fill that stadium. Look, for me, the club needs plenty of work. Can I just say a little thing on Paulo Sousa? Because I remember a little trivia fact. He's one of
it's got nothing to do. It's got nothing to do with Di Maria,
or Di Maria. No. 4 players have won the Champions League back-to-back in consecutive seasons with 2 different clubs. Paulo Sousa is one of them, with Borussia Dortmund and then Juventus next year.
He was a good player.
He was a very good player. There are 3 others, and I'll let you try and think who they might be.
Okay, we'll look for that. By the way, if you want to try to answer, or if you just want to tell Robbie something else or ask him a question, you can write in Ligue1podcast@gmail.com. LIGUE, that's the French spelling, 1podcast@gmail.com, or hashtag Ligue1podcast. You can hashtag us at Ligue1_ENG on Twitter.
Answers next week.
Answers next week. And next week, we are also going to have an in-depth interview with Lebo Motiba, who is a South African striker doing very well with Strasbourg. He scored at the weekend again. Strasbourg drawing 2-2 against Nîmes, and Strasbourg
top scorer for Strasbourg.
He's top scorer for Strasbourg. They're back in the big time. This is a big football club. They won the French title back in the 1970s, and it's quite exciting what is going on at the Menno, one of the most atmospheric stadiums in Ligue 1. Our man Robbie Thompson had the pleasure of travelling to Strasbourg and trying some sausages and sauerkraut, and also he managed to squeeze in an interview with Lebo Motiba. And Robbie, you enjoyed your chat.
I did. Fantastic young man. He came in. He was asking, "Are we doing this in French?" When he found out I was speaking in English, he was very happy. Look, honestly, everyone was saying, "Lebo, you're going to see. He's just, the French say, he's un crème. C'est un crème. Il est vraiment trop gentil.
He's a cream. Yeah,
he's a cream. It just means that he's a lovely, lovely guy." And it's true. He just smiled the whole way through the interview. Was just talking about how great life is, how much he's to be thankful for. You get the feeling that pressure is not a problem. It's something he doesn't feel. He's their second most expensive ever signing after Chilavert, the Paraguayan goalkeeper. No pressure, though. 8 goals in the league now this season. He scored twice in the semi-final win in the Coupe de la Ligue over Bordeaux as well, a 3-2 win to fire them into this final. They are a big club. They've done it so tough over the last decade when they were down playing the likes of Jura Sud and Schiltigheim in regional football. They're back, and Matt, as you heard, I asked him the big question as well about the one on everyone's lips. You are the only player that tucks your shirt into your shorts. What? Why?
No, normally this, ever since I was young, I used to play with, my shirt under my shorts, and me, it's the way I play. It's my own style, and that's how I stay simple. For me, it's staying simple and respecting what I'm doing, and I like putting shorts under my shorts, and that's my own style.
Robbie, ever the professional, going straight to the big issues with Lebo Motiba. He is going to be playing in the Coupe de la Ligue final coming up at the end of the month. Strasbourg against Guingamp, a massive game for those two clubs. Now, just to finish, a quick word about Saint-Etienne, who got a fantastic 5-0 win at the weekend away to Caen. They are back in contention for Europe. They are just 1 point behind Marseille. And another team, just a point behind Marseille, another historical French team, Stade de Reims. We talked about Strasbourg being back in the big time. Reims, who were twice European Cup finalists back in the 50s and early 60s, 6 times champions of France. They got a victory at the weekend, Andy, and they are doing very, very well. Sorry, it was Robbie. Robbie, you commentated Reims.
I was commentating that. They're enjoying their best season in the top flight since they last won the league, which was back in 1963. They are a club that we should have expected something from them. I mentioned it last week. They broke all the records in the second division last year. They were the biggest attack in the history of the second division, 84 points. No one had ever had that many points in the second division either. David Guillon is doing remarkable things. And look, the week before, I think it finished 1-1 with Dijon, where they absolutely dominated them, and they failed to get the result. They got that result at the weekend, thoroughly deserved. Look, they've got so many neat and tidy players. That's what I really like about this Reims side. They're not flamboyant. The goals are coming from Remy Houdin, who's a local product, who scored a fantastic goal again. But it's just this thing. They're a small club and everything's clicking.
But, Robbie, another local product is Champagne, because Reims are the capital of the Champagne region. And when they had Raymond Coppa and Jules Fontaine, they played Champagne football. Apparently, that is where the term comes from. Andy, are we going to see some champagne? We're seeing some nice football,
We're seeing
solid
some
football.
Well, listen, the corks will be popping if they get into the Europa League. That would be great, wouldn't it? But I think the thing about Reims is, you said they had this great team last year. They scored lots of goals. Let's not forget they sold their best striker to Rennes, Jordan Sibachou, for a lot of money before the season. They've kind of slightly changed the way they play. Now they're more about, to my eyes, more about having a solid defence. It's not exactly what you might call champagne football, but it's incredibly effective. 13 games unbeaten is incredible for a team that's come up from the second division like them. And for them to be where they are, they're probably not going to qualify for Europe, but if they finish 6th, 7th, even 8th, that's...
They might, Andy. They're brilliant. A point off 4th.
Yeah, they could do it, and I guess one of the things that could help them would be if Paris Saint-Germain win the Cup as well as the League, and then it will mean that 5th place will also be a Europa League qualifying spot. So, yeah, it's possible, but I wouldn't say that it's likely.
It's fantastic. Hearing Andy Scott talking about Jordan Sibachou and Stade de Reims with such passion, such enthusiasm. I never thought I would see the day, but this is the place you can hear us talking with passion and hopefully a bit of insight. Depends on the guests at times. That concludes our podcast. Le Beau Jeu is finished for today, for episode 3. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we hope you will tune in again to our Coupe de la Ligue special, where we will be hearing notably from Lebo Motiba, the Strasbourg striker, from Robbie Thompson, Andy Scott and myself, Matt Spiro. It's time to say au revoir et à bientôt.
See you again soon.
See you soon.
Oh, what a goal!